Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our newest edition of AmiSights. I'm Ami Kassar, your host, along with our co-host, Lynn Ilzer, aka SBA Queen. Super excited to have my friend here, Peter Winick, the king of thought leadership. Peter, we're excited to learn all about you, your business, your background, and really dig into thought leadership and what it's all about. So, Peter, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on board.
We're happy to have you here, and we'll go back to the beginning. Tell us when you got the entrepreneurial bug, and tell us what was it that led you to thought leadership?
So two kind of different but interrelated questions. So the entrepreneurial bug, I think I was born with it. I mean, it was everything from, washing cars at 10 and paper routes and, all sorts of things as far back as I can remember. So
Good.
I think the way I'll sort of tell the story is there was always what I thought were two different sides to the coin that is me. One is entrepreneurial, right? And then the other is now we would call it thought leadership, or as Ami said, the king of thought leadership. I'm kind of, that's, starve a cold, feed an ego. Thank you for that. But always sort of dorky, right? So we used to call it being a nerd, meaning reading a ton, consuming a ton of information. I started my first, real business. I was 22. And, as you all can relate, when you start a business when you're young and underfunded and don't know much about anything, the easiest way to figure out how to do things is either trial and error, which is expensive, or, geez, let me read an article, let me read a book, let me whatever. And then like 20 years ago, those two worlds sort of collided. And of all the hundreds and hundreds of business books and articles and such that I had read up until that point, I never once ever stopped and said, huh, what's that author's business model? How do they make a living? Because who cares? Like I bought a book, I paid my 20 bucks, read it, took an idea, implemented it. Now that's really all I do every day is say, geez, what's the business model for someone that creates thought leadership? So those two came together when I got brought in to do a turnaround in a communications consulting company that was broken, that was based on a book somebody had written in the 60s. And I was like, oh, wait, there's business models here. That's really, really cool. So it's become a bit of a somewhere between a passion and an obsession. Passion sounds better than obsession or whatever.
Well, tell me, what was the first business that you started at age 22?
So the business that I started at age 22, today you would probably recognize it more as something like a Grubhub. So it's multi-restaurant food delivery. But you got to
Wow.
realize, like back in the early 90s, the technology sell was convincing a restaurant to install a fax machine. Remember fax machines?
Yeah, I do. Very well.
By getting Vito from the pizza joint to put a fax machine that cost $1,000 behind the piece, and then to monitor those faxes, make those orders, give you a discount, all that. So that was the first, but I had an exit on that in 1999. So that was a long time ago. So
That's interesting. So tell us, why did you leave the business and what did you do next?
well, I left because we had an exit. So somebody engineered a roll-up of that industry that I was able to participate in. And this is back in the days of every put.com at the end of everything, Webvan and pets.com and all that.
Yes, yes.
That eventually imploded. So there's a whole other story of, how does it feel to be in your early 30s having an exit, thinking you're on top of the world, worth, whatever, 7, 8 figures, whatever it was, to being vaporized in 18 months. Like that, the answer is not good. So from there, I was like, okay, now what? Right. So from there, for some reason, I got drawn into, well, I started a couple other businesses, but really drawn into consulting, because what that business cured me of is the want and need and desire to ever be in a business that required me to have a ton of staff. Because I think 100
Interesting.
people working for me in my early 20s, and it was miserable. Probably because I was a shitty manager and leader, but it was just
Okay.
miserable. I'm like, all right, I like don't want that again. So
That's interesting. So, managing people wasn't your favorite part of the job, obviously.
no, and there was a time where the business was really, it was a 7-day-a-week business, and it was, the hours were long and it was brutal, and the margins were tight and all that. And I sat down and I made a list of all the things about it that I loved and all the things that I hated. And I converted the hate list into the job description of my junior partner. And that was the greatest sale I ever did. Say, hey, I think, we're getting to the point where we should really just sort of separate responsibilities. Here's yours. Here's yours. Like everything that's not on that list, I'll take care of. So that worked for a while.
That's great.
So how did you get from there to where you are today, friend?
Yeah. So the last 20 some odd years have really been focused in one way, shape, or form on consulting. And then I probably going back more than 20 consulting, and the last 20 or so consulting specifically in the space of thought leadership. So that's where the entrepreneurial gene comes in. Like I saw I was working exclusively from 2005 to 2008 for a guy named Keith Ferrazzi, who some of you may have heard of. He wrote a world-class book called Never Eat Alone. And I partnered with Keith and worked exclusively for him for over 3 years, which was an amazing experience. But part of what I learned at that point was, wow, there's a lot of opportunity here to support thought leaders in that space, because most of them, Keith being an incredible exception, are really awful at sales, marketing, strategy, business development, distribute. They want to sit there and write and research and support their clients, which are all wonderful things, but you can't do that and not be mindful of all the other components of a business that need to happen for it to be a viable and sustainable business.
So let's go back a second and just for people's help, what is thought leadership? It means different things to different people.
Yeah, so that's a great question, because I think if we were talking about lots of other things, we wouldn't need to define it. So thought leadership to me is there's really two sides to that. There's the thought and there's the leadership. So on the thought side, it's being really, really thoughtful. Well, where might that come from? That could come from your experience. If you're senior executive, CEO, entrepreneur, whatever, this is what I've learned, right? It could come from academia, something that someone's researched. It could come from supporting others, sort of what does a consultant learn if they do certain things? So where is the thought coming from, and the unique thought? Not just, I think part of the problem today is we're living in an age where everybody could cut and paste and regurgitate, something. That's not thought. That's just more stuff. But what is it that you're doing that is unique, that you're adding to the conversation? And recognizing there have probably been others that have been around that have thought about whatever it is, leadership, management, whatever, before you. What are you adding to the conversation? The leadership side is, do you have the courage to take that conversation in a new direction, in a better direction, in a different direction, right? So you put those two together and you have thought leadership. There are really, really smart people that are not thought leaders, right? And then there are people that are good at the sort of analysis side, but can't put together their own interpretation of what that means. So that's how I look at thought leadership. And then the other way I would answer that question is, anybody that calls themselves a thought leader probably isn't one. It's something that I always think someone else or some others in the community that you serve should sort of bestow upon you. It's not quite like being knighted, but if you go around saying, hey, I'm a thought leader, that's the salesperson that says, no, trust me. It kind of doesn't work.
Who does it matter to? So like thought leadership, like who cares?
Yeah, nobody. Thanks. Good night.
No. I don't mean that in a negative sense.
No. I think where it matters is depending on the industry and business that you're in, but that is getting broader and broader and broader. We are all getting commoditized, right? There's somebody that can do what most of us can do for less. We're all you don't want to fall down the slippery slope of being in a commodity business, right? And being only judged on price. So, professional services, 1,000%. How do you show the world who you are and how you think? So, for example, if you're a small consulting firm in the human capital space and you're going up against the Deloittes or these really big entities, or you're in the strategy space going up McKinsey, you can't outspend them, period, full stop, right? You can't have the history or the heritage that they do. You can't have more offices that they do, but you can be as smart or smarter than they are, right? And you could represent that in your thought leadership and get that out and get that out and get that out. So I think ultimately it's the most cost-effective way to elevate your brand and to acquire net new clients in a lot of different spaces. Would it work if I sold kilos of wheat? Probably not. Would it work if I was in the business of, I don't know, refrigerated transportation of frozen meats or something? Yeah, I think it probably could.
So can you share some examples of some of your clients and how you help them?
Yeah, so our clients fall into a couple of different buckets. So we have, nonfiction business authors where they've written great books or in the process of writing great books, but a book is not a business model. So now they have to think about what are the underlying business model. We have academics, we have boutique consulting firms, we have current and former CEOs, senior executives at both public and privately traded entities, including nonprofits. So that's an example of the types. And then we also do work with large organizations that are working on their thought leadership. So the big line in the sand is, for most of our clients, the thought leadership is the product. It is the business. They sell derivatives of their intellectual property in the forms of keynotes and speeches and licensing their content and validated assessment tools and video-based training and certification. There's so many cool and creative business models that you can consider with the same idea that lives in a book that costs, $25.
So do you help them promote their differentiator? What is making them different from any other consulting firm? What is their unique offering to the world? Is that what you identify
The
for them?
way we support our clients is, number one, and we don't budge from this, period, full stop, it's strategy, right? Because most thought leaders are operating without a strategy, with a broken one or with an antiquated one. And if you were to apply that sort of way of thinking to many other businesses that are capital intense or whatever, it wouldn't happen. You can go raise 50 million bucks to go build some commercial real estate and not have a solid plan, or not have your investors look at something. But thought leaders, they do it. And there's lots of reasons they do it. So number one, you have to have a strategy. A good strategy will give you clarity. If you have clarity, you can effectively prioritize what could you do, would you do, should you do against a set of goals and objectives. Once you've got a strategy in place, you got to look at the brand and the platform. Then you have to look at, how do I productize these ideas? What are the business models that I want to engage in, right? And then there's a lot of energy that we spend on sales, marketing, distribution, productization, the business side of the house, which is where I think some of the entrepreneurial skills come in, because we move a lot of our clients from a practice where they need to be in the room or in the Zoom for the ideas and thus dollars to be exchanged, to a business where there are other ways that they can monetize their thought leadership that aren't dependent on, oh, I have to be in, Phoenix on Tuesday to deliver a keynote.
So thought leaders in general, like doctors, aren't business people. Is that what you're saying?
Some thought leaders are. So some thought leaders that I work with, I'm lucky in that, I've got former CEOs of Fortune 50s as clients. They're business people. They're some of the best business people I've seen. Do they know and are they fluent in the business of thought leadership? Maybe, maybe not. Because like anything else, it's a different business with a different, different cadences, different nuances, different things to think about.
What is the similarity between all thought leaders? Like, what's the...
Love that question. I think they're all really curious. They're all really passionate about what they do. They're all lifelong learners. For most of them, not all, but almost all, the reason that they're developing the thought leadership that they are is it has served them well, or it's a problem they've tried to solve, or it's, something they wrestled with and figured out, I did a piece a little while ago on, none of our clients write self-help books, but for all of our clients, the book that they wrote helped themselves.
That's interesting.
Is thought leadership a journey? So do you get, so without being ego, I think of myself as a thought leader in the small business finance space. And I think my position has evolved over years. And you start by just blogging away and hoping someone listens, and then hopefully you start to get some traction. And then you start incorporating social, some press, and some speaking, and this, and that, and the other. And I think my authority has evolved over time. Is that a fair description of how it works, if it works well? Not saying mine couldn't be better.
It's one path that works well. It's not the path, but I think, is it a journey? I would say there's two parts to the journey. One is the thought leadership itself evolves and matures and develops over time. I would argue that the stuff that you're putting out today, Ami, is probably different than it was 10 years ago. Your thinking's changed, the market's changed, the industry's changed, right?
Absolutely.
So, it's not E equal MC square, right? Like that. Not that that's not thought
Not
leadership.
static.
I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not throwing shade on Einstein, but that's different, right? Like once you solve that, that's solved, right? So I think number one, the thought leadership itself evolves, and then number two is how you get it out there, what you do with it, the business model. That's always evolving, always, always. Think about just, we're all sitting on a Zoom call now. We weren't doing that 5 years ago.
Totally.
Absolutely.
Who are your favorite type of clients to work with?
The ones that can afford to pay the largest bills that we can send.
Come on. Those are usually the most difficult clients, not necessarily the favorite clients.
No, my favorite clients are seriously the clients that have the courage to change, the clients that listen, that challenge, and aren't afraid to implement and execute. The problem with a lot of thought leaders is it's the curse of the expert. They're so damn good at what they do, and some of them are literally the best in the world, that they've lost the beginner's mindset in other things. So when you start to make changes and move the business in different directions, they're like, uh-oh, I might not be the greatest at that. Like, no, you might not, but that's okay.
Do you offer your clients deliverables, so to speak, or something that they can measure what you're doing for them and how they're succeeding because you are there?
Yeah. So developing a strategy, it's hard to measure a specific deliverable. The deliverable is the strategy. When it moves into development, implementation, execution, it's easier to measure because our business model is we start with the strategy, then we get into the development. But ultimately, with a subset of our clients, we'll actually stick around and own responsibility for sales, marketing, business development, and distribution. Because, if you're a 55-year-old academic and you've never sold before into large scale B2B, is that something you really want to master at that stage? Would you rather partner with someone that's been doing it for 20 years and can crush it?
Right.
Right. A rhetorical question. So that's easy to measure, how much revenue can be attributed to the work that we did over time. But there is an investment stage. You got to invest in strategy. You got to invest in developing the product offerings, the solutions, the brand.
Right.
Everybody wants to go to market. Most people want to go to market aren't ready to go to market yet.
Interesting. So that's part of what you do is
Yeah.
get them ready, obviously. And, so when someone comes to you, it's basically because they know that they need to monetize what they're doing.
There are a lot of triggers that get them to come to us. One might be they're writing a book, so people think that's the time to really get serious about it. Others might be they've been doing it for quite some time and they've hit a plateau. They're a one-man or one-woman show. They're making a decent living, but it's, their P&L looks like the EKG of a cardiac patient. It's not predictable. It's bouncing all over, it's stressful. And how do they mature that and say, I'd actually like for this to be a business. I'd like, and now
we have 15 people on our P&L still looks like an EKG of a cardiac patient. So give the guy a break, will you?
hit the paddles. Well, yeah, but hopefully it doesn't correspond to the EKG of the CEO, right?
No.
That's called Lexapro, but
yeah. So I think that, other reasons they come is they might be, we have a lot of clients that transition in from business or something, they've had an exit or they're leaving the corporate world and they're like, okay, how do I do this right? I've got the resources and anything I do with excellence, and I want to hire the best people and I want to make this win. And I'm smart enough to know there's a lot I don't know.
What does your team look like? How many of you are there?
We have 10, virtual and not virtual post-COVID. Going back to my PTSD of starting my first business, when I moved my business from a practice. So the first couple of years I was like, hang up my shingle, do my thing, be a solo. And it was I don't want to deal with the people side of this. I'm fine with the client side. And then eventually it just grew and grew and grew. I'm like, okay, I guess I got a thing here, right? But I don't want an office. I made the list of here's the stuff I don't want to deal with. So we've got a virtual team. They're real people. They just get to choose to live wherever they want, you know. So we had someone that was in Iceland. We've got people in Canada, Florida, Texas, Las Vegas. I don't think geography matters. It changes the way that you have to set expectations. It changes the way that you manage. It changes the way that you have to deal with culture. But I've got a team of really, really smart, dedicated, passionate folks that have been, some of them have been with me for 14 years. I think the newest is with us like 6 or 7 years. So it sticks because it's a fit on a bunch of different levels for folks that work with us.
Do you have a favorite success story?
No, do you have a favorite child? I can't answer that. Wait, wait, he might want to
You
answer
love
that.
them all differently.
I have a favorite dog. I only have one.
You have a
Right.
favorite daughter and a favorite son, Ami. Come on.
Yeah.
No, the ones that I like the most, I mean, I think the way I think about that is people that come to our site and look at us, they go to the rock star and say, oh, wow, what was it like to work with so-and-so? And that's great, whatever. But some of the ones that have been my personal favorites are someone that we took from sort of a solo that was struggling to someone that got what they wanted, a real business where they're thriving. And it might not be a name brand or a, $100 million business or whatever, but we know that we were able to 5X them in 2 years and leave them far better or stay with them far better than when we started. And they were more impact driven, right? And everybody wins, right? They're having more impact because their work's getting democratized and unleashed to more and more people. Oh, by the way, they're making more money. Oh, by the way, they can hire more people and do more things and create more thought leadership. So there is a sort of a virtuous cycle to it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Right.
I love it.
It's terrific.
Do you ever partner with other marketing agencies who need the niche help?
Yeah. So the way I wouldn't just say marketing agencies, my business from a business model standpoint is really simple. There's 3 ways that we get clients. Number 1 is inbound. So I have what I call a ton of strategic mousetraps out there, a ton of content, video, articles, speeches I've given, tons and tons of it over the last, 15, 20 years. So someone steps in the mousetrap, they go, ouch. They look at that and they go, oh, maybe these folks might be smart. Let me talk to them. So we love that. Then there's strategic and targeted outbound. So we know if certain things are true, we want to talk to certain people. If someone is the CEO of a consulting firm and they're a contributor at Forbes, or they've got a book in the pipeline, or we know certain things and we'll reach out to them and try to attract them. But the third, to answer your question, is I've developed a really, really wonderful referral network over the years of other folks that are of service, because I always put the client in the middle of the universe. Who else do they trust? Who else do they go to for advice? And where is that services that they provide to that client kind of butts up against us, but it's not a direct competitor. I don't believe in the world of direct competition. The pie's big enough for everybody, So like we work with ghostwriting agencies, we work with PR agencies, we work with social media agencies, we work with podcast guesting. I mean, if you think about who else are these people engaging, who else are they working with? We partner with them and we cross refer, like, because our clients come to us and we'll say, listen, if you're going to want a ghostwriter for your book, you definitely want that. In this instance, I'm going to connect you with someone that's the best in the business. They're world class. And I can tell you that I've worked with them for 15 years and we've done 30 projects together and I can vouch for them. Like, that means a lot. Or I need an IP attorney, or I need, like, whatever they need. We want to be able to provide that as a non-revenue generating service to the client of, hey, I need someone that ...
Love it.
Great. It's great.
How do people find you? Oh, you just told us, but where do they go to find you? Do you have a podcast too? Tell us about your podcast.
Yes, well, a couple different questions. You can find me, our website is thoughtleadershipleverage.com. You can actually email me directly at peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. But the podcast, yeah. So I started the podcast 6.5 years ago. We're at 575 episodes. It's a top 2% podcast, apparently globally now. And we've gotten a whole bunch of accolades in the thought leadership space. It's achieved what we've wanted it to, which is elevate the brand, attract net new clients, and most importantly, it's a great way for me to learn new stuff every time I have a conversation.
Love it.
It's true.
Any
We do
books?
learn every time we talk to anybody. It's
Yeah.
great.
Any books, Peter?
No. I've
Okay.
talked more people out of writing books than most people I know.
Is it because people don't read them, or it's because they don't have the attention span? What is it? They'd rather listen to their content, right?
No, I think, well, there's a lot of reasons underneath that. Number one is most people, when they say they want to write a book, they're not really ready from the standpoint of, okay, so now the book comes out. What do you want? What's the next step for that reader? So it would be like opening a retail store, and so imagine opening an ice cream shop with vanilla. Not going to last long, right?
Right.
Or a candle store with one candle. You got to think through, okay, if they fall in love with the book, what's next? And a lot of people don't think about that. So it's rare that I'll tell somebody, you're an idiot. You have nothing to say. Don't write a book. I'd say, no, now's not the time for you to write a book. We've got to get certain things in place so that when you make that crazy investment of time, energy, effort, money, etc., in the book, we're maximizing the impact it can have and the ROI it's going to have for you.
Interesting.
And then, to your point, like what's up with books, depressing statistics, the average nonfiction business book sells 1,400 units. That ain't a lot.
No.
And more depressing than that is Amazon tells us this, the average person gets through how many pages of the measly 12 or 1,400 units does the average reader get through?
Not many.
Give me a number. Guess how many jelly beans are in the jar?
30.
18. That was close.
Yeah.
Not so far.
It's
So
low.
I'm like,
Yeah.
so one of the takeaways there is like, I'm a dork that reads 2 books a week, but I can never extrapolate my behavior to say, well, every adult in this income level in this age group must do that. Therefore, the market is like, no, you've got to understand what's going on there. But books serve other purposes, right? It's a forcing mechanism to codify your ideas and thinking. It's a calling card. It's a differentiator, right? And if you're smart, you think about it, most of the publishing industry thinks in this 3 to 6 month book launch, boom, like a movie release. And I'm like, no, that's wrong. You should be thinking about the investments that you make in a book. And this is my entrepreneurial hat, as a 7 to 10 year amortization schedule. That's an investment, right? Because other than if you're writing a book about the election season or something really, really timely, I still buy copies of Good to Great for people. I still buy copies of In Search of Excellence for people. There are books, not every book is timeless, but
Right.
most books, it doesn't matter. Did that get published in 2019 or 2023? It was a good idea. I read it.
Yeah, that's true. Right.
Well, thanks for giving me assurance because I started to work on my next one. So appreciate you, buddy.
Well, let me ask you this then. So if
That's
you're working
good.
on your next one, what does success look like for you in that book? So if we were to say it's a year after that book is out, what does success look like? What would wild success look like for you?
I mean, I don't do maybe my definition of success is a little different. I believe deeply in servant leadership.
Okay.
And if I believe I have some strong, and we'll see, the book might not materialize. We're just starting to work on it. We're starting to do the interviews for it. We have a thesis. And if it works great, we'll write a book. If not, we won't. And if it adds to our library of content and information and value we provide to our community and information, awesome. And but we'll do it differently this time. We'll be starting seeding a lot of video content about our book as we do the interviews. We're starting to seed that now.
But that's a tactic. You're doing what everybody else. That's a tactic. I didn't ask you that. I asked you what success looks like, not
success. If I'm providing value to my community and being of value and giving them insight and information.
okay.
And if we decide as we go through the research that we've got, in fact, something valuable to share, we'll publish.
Okay.
And if we
It's
don't,
more about impact than income, right? You want people to internalize these ideas, see the world a little bit differently, and do something differently.
to me, that's thought leadership.
Yeah. No, well, that's one
part of thought leadership.
Yeah, exactly.
But here's the thing that I think about that. Like, you do have, Ami, a lot of things to say, and your books, plural, did. But is there a motive behind that, though? Because you also have a product.
But it helps. Yes, all the content and all the material leads into the product engine.
Right.
But
So that's the question. I mean,
Yeah.
don't you think, Pete, that
Yeah, of
that's a
course.
good strategy to
It
write a
is
book
it
because of
is
our
our
business?
it is our strategy, but I wouldn't write
Yeah.
the book. I wouldn't write a book just to write a book. I'd write a book. We'll publish the book if we think we have something truly meaningful to share with the world.
Right.
And if we don't, we won't. So some people publish books sort of just for the hell of it. Or just oh, we have to get a book out, so let's figure out a book and go.
Right.
The last book, I mean, the last real book was like 6 or 7 years ago, so it's not like I'm in a rush.
Yeah, the thing that I always think about is sometimes you see a TED talk and say, wow, that was an awesome kernel of an idea. I wish that person would write a book. And then there were a lot of other business books you read and said that could have stayed as a TED talk. 18 minutes of that was sufficient, right? So
We'll see, and
It's
it
true.
might not work, but time will tell. So,
okay, fair
and
answer.
fortunately, I'm now at the point I have someone helping me with it, so my life's a little easier. So.
Right.
All right, Peter, it's been a great pleasure, always fun. Thank you so much. Good luck with everything, and thank you for helping teach our listeners some valuable information.
I learned more about thought leadership than I ever knew before. So thank you very much. I really appreciate you.
Thank you. I
Thank you
appreciate it.
so much. Take care now.